Buffalo After Dark is proud to recommend I Barbecue for You. Pre-orders are suggested by calling 716-880-7667. I Barbecue for You, Buffalo's new barbecue destination.
Just move the Coyotes. Don't do another expansion.
Right? It would never crossed my mind. So somebody called the house when I was out mowing the grass.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Holy shit, your face is like purple.
Are you still up? Now in their fifth season, it's Buffalo After Dark.
Welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It is Thursday night, June 5th. Yeah, we'll be here for the next couple Thursdays, but it's all good. So, of course, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Hanson's here, and what's going on, man? You got some fun stuff coming up in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I do. And you know what? Summer's here pretty much. Not really until the 20th of June, I believe. But at the same time, you know, the draft's coming up in the end of the month, which is always exciting. But you know what, too? Mandatory minicamp is coming up in the NFL. Baseball is basically in full swing. There's a lot to cover. And I got to tell you, it's been almost an entire week since we did the show. And we have a lot of ground to cover up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of hockey news that came out over the past few days. A lot of stuff in football, a lot of stuff in baseball. So we're going to try to cram it in all to an hour and a half as we usually do. But of course, if you're live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to drop us a line. We got the chat open, and of course, you can view our past episodes on Spotify. So yeah, we'll get started with everything. And actually, let's start with hockey today, because that's going to be one of the biggest things where we had a lot of news come in. Obviously, the biggest thing that happened is the Stanley Cup Finals started. And the Florida Panthers, they did not look too good in that opening game. They did come back, but in that respect, though, they did lose the first game. And let's just say they're down 1-0 in this series so far. And, you know, gotta love how things ended up going for them. But it was a 4-3 loss. Edmonton's up 1-0.
Well, I think in Florida's defense, it's the first game of the series. So it's not like it's the end of the world. Like, it helps that you get that first win. But, you know, Edmonton had a very good game all around. You know, they played great. I think what really struck a nerve was that there were some costly mistakes that the Panthers made in overtime that really killed their vibe. But at the same time, it's not like the Panthers are a bunch of slouches. They've already seen Edmonton in the finals. Right. And considering that this is the first Stanley Cup rematch in over 15 years, since 2008 and 2009 with the Red Wings and the Penguins?
Yeah, something like that. And I mean, when you look at how Florida played and you look at how Edmonton played, I mean, Florida, yeah, they did make some mistakes, but it wasn't outright an awful game. I mean, Florida did have a lot of good chances.
They did. I mean, the Panthers at one point were up 3-1, and I genuinely thought they were going to win that first game, and I said, is it over before it began? And the next thing you know, depth took a huge toll, but I think the player that really stood out from the crowd in Edmonton was Leon Draisaitl. Because to me, he's a big-time playmaker for the Oilers, and obviously being the right-hand man to Connor McDavid, I mean, it does a lot of work for you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, and you know what's funny, too, is that a lot of people are, this time of year, at this, this time around at least, a lot of people are picking the Oilers to win the Cup this year. But for me, I'm going to stand my ground, and I think Florida's going to repeat.
Yeah, it very well could happen. And we'll just kind of recap a little bit about the game. I mean, you mentioned Draisaitl. He had a good game. He had a couple goals. And, I mean, he opened up the game basically only 106 into it, where he got his 8th of the playoffs, and he was assisted by Kapanen and Wallman. Then Sam Bennett ends up getting a deflection and scores at 10:49 of the first from Verhaeghe and Kachuk. Then Marchand later in the period at 12:30 ends up getting a wrist shot from Schmidt and Rodriguez with the assist. So then, of course, going into the second period, Bennett scores again, gets his 12th of the playoffs from Schmidt and Verhaeghe. Arvidsson ends up getting Edmonton back into it from Podkolzin and Bouchard, and then Matthias Alcom in the third period from McDavid and Kapanen. And overtime, Draisaitl seals the deal, gets his 9th of the playoffs from McJesus and Perry. So that's basically where you're at. But I mean, when you look at the overall stats, I mean, Edmonton did exactly what they had to do. They got 46 shots on goal. So, I mean, obviously, you put the puck on the net, you're going to get something at some point. Yes, they did trail on the faceoff percentage 56.4 to 43.6, and they only made out on 25% of their power plays versus 50 for Florida. But when you look at the penalty minutes, it was pretty even, 8 versus 6. They both were even on hits at 51 apiece. Block shots were pretty close. Edmonton was only had 2 more blocks, 21 to 19. The giveaways was fairly even, 16-14 in favor of Florida, and then the takeaways were in favor of Florida also. They had 8 versus 5. So I mean, fairly even for the most part, which is not a bad thing. And that's what you're hoping for, especially when you're getting into it. Now, granted, Edmonton had went 1 for 4 versus 1 for 2 on the power play, so obviously it's a little bit different there. But if they had to do anything different, I would say just keep putting shots on net because obviously that helps, but just work on the power play a little bit. But there really wasn't too much that they had to worry about.
No, it's not even necessarily that they have the things to worry about. Like they know what to do, but
Mhm.
it's just that because they've already seen the Panthers, they kind of worked on. You could just tell they worked on their forecheck a little bit better than they did a year ago. And one thing that the Oilers did a year ago, leading up to this year, is they added depth, and that was something that they were desperately lacking
Yeah.
last year in the Stanley Cup Finals. Was they didn't have enough depth to get over Florida. Like Florida now, I think has a lot more depth. If you know what, and to be completely honest, until otherwise, I think this Florida Panthers team is, if not more dangerous than they were a year ago, because you're adding Seth Jones, you're adding Brad Marchand, and if Bob has a bad game, you have Vitek Vanacek, who's a really solid backup goaltender, and then it's like you have all this talent. I mean, I know they're all UFAs except for Seth Jones, but if you take it from retrospective, the Panthers are really trying to go all in. And I will say this, and I was talking to a handful of people. I think the word legacy is going to be thrown around a lot in this series. This is a defining legacy series for the Oilers because there is so much more pressure on Edmonton this time
Oh
around
yeah.
than last year because no one knew what was going to happen last year. Edmonton's legacy is on the line. Are they going to be massive choke artists in the playoffs with McDavid, and he may never reach the Stanley Cup again after this year? I mean, he's fortunate this year, but again afterwards. Do they win the Stanley Cup and end the 32-year drought in Canada not having a cup? Or does the legacy of Connor McDavid as a generational talent become a choke artist and leaves Edmonton the following year?
That's a good point. And here's the thing with it. If you're Edmonton and you lose this series, what do you do to that core that you've built over the last 10 years? I mean, that's going to be one of the biggest questions that would come about because, of course, you have McDavid, you have Draisaitl, you have Nurse, you ended up getting in goaltending. Of course, you have Evander Kane. You did a lot of different things to try and build up that team. And obviously, I mean, goaltending's finally not horrific like it had been. But at the same time, I mean, defensively, it's a lot better than it had been also. But then if you're getting to that point where you're in the playoffs and you can't make something happen, to your point, does McDavid want out? And does he go to a different team? Does potentially Draisaitl want out and go to a different team? There's a lot of different ways that could go, but I would have to think that, especially if Florida does win the Cup, I'm assuming those questions are going to definitely come up because it'll be so many opportunities you've had in the playoffs and you still haven't gotten anything done.
Well, the other thing I want to mention too, before I forget, is regarding the word legacy. Because I mentioned Edmonton's legacy,
Mhm.
Florida's legacy is also on the line. Because the legacy here is if the Panthers don't win the cup, then so be it. I mean, because they already have a
Right.
cup. So in this case, it's whatever. If they don't win it, they don't win it. But in terms of legacy, though, if you want to be one of the elite teams in the National Hockey League in the next half decade or so, in the
Mhm.
same company as Tampa Bay or Chicago or any of those two teams like Pittsburgh, because repeating as back-to-back Stanley Cup champions is not very easy in hockey, and that I think that's been said a handful of times.
Yeah.
Florida's legacy will be they don't want to be a one-year team. They really don't want to be. It's not like they're
Mhm.
proud of just having one Stanley Cup. They want a
Right.
second Stanley Cup. But I think the legacy here will be is I think most of these guys are Hall of Famers, but the legacy will be are they going to be the better Florida team down the road, or are they an up and coming dynasty? Or like that's the big story because
Mhm.
again, the word legacy is going to be thrown around a lot in this series. So I think this could go either direction between Edmonton or Florida. Like the national media, all the betting odds, everybody's picking the Oilers. But for me, I'm standing there and I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing that it could be Edmonton per se, but I
Yeah.
just have this belief that Florida is going to win it again.
Yeah, and Florida, I would say on paper, I think honestly is the better team right now. I mean, especially when you look at the depth, you look at their goaltending, you look at what they've been able to build over the last several years, and plus with the fact that they have gone to the cup recently and won the cup recently, so they know what it takes to get there. Edmonton, this is a little bit this is a little bit of a new territory for them, but at the same time, do they have the talent to get it done? Sure. Will they get it done? That's the big question. And I have to think, even though Edmonton's up 1-0 in this series, I would have to say when Florida and Edmonton play tomorrow night, I would not be surprised if Florida ties it 1-1 and we're making it at least a minimum 6-game series.
Well, they were down 2-0 a few weeks ago to the Leafs in the semifinals.
And they came back and smoked the Leafs.
Yeah, so realistically, this could be a blessing because the Oilers are very good at home. There's no question about it. But if they can win at least one game in Edmonton, if they win game 2, if they win game 2 and then potentially win 2 more in Miami, oh my God, that series is going to be
in great shape.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I think though, realistically though, I think the big thing that's going to really separate the Panthers is like, to your point, is that they've been there before. They've already won a Stanley Cup. But I think if there's one player in this series that's really going to stand out above the rest, that will shut down Connor McDavid because everybody else in the playoffs cannot do it. The only player that can really keep up with him is Sasha Barkov.
Yeah. And he's proven he can play.
Yeah, and think of it like this: the dude is a Selke Trophy winner multiple times over, and I think he won it again this year. So that right there shows that he is the new modern equivalent of Patrice Bergeron, and he is the best defensive forward in the NHL. And the thing about Sasha Barkov is I love Sasha Barkov.
Yeah.
The big thing about him is that he's not flashy like McDavid, sure, but he does his job well, and he never publicly says it. He's like an assassin. He just comes out of nowhere and just does his job.
Yeah, he's not flashy. He's just effective. And yes, he did actually win the Selke Trophy again this year, so it's the second straight year, and it's his third overall.
And again, if they do it again, and Barkov shuts down McDavid, and again, it's not to say that he hasn't done it before, because he clearly has, and he just won a Stanley Cup a year ago, but again, if the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, they're and to a lot of people's eyes, they're going to be the Kansas City Chiefs of hockey, where the league has been so spoiled in the past decade, since like 2020, really since like the pandemic, where every season since that time has been the 2 Florida teams to make it out of the Eastern Conference, and a lot of people are saying, well, Florida's a very, very well balanced team, and they have the strengths and they have the skill to compete with Edmonton. Because again, if you could shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, both in the defensive zone and the offensive zone, and you don't give them any chances, they could definitely win the cup again. And I'm not counting any eggs until it's officially over. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. And actually, in addition to the Selke Trophy, Barkov took the King Clancy this year, too.
Oh, that's even better. And
his trophy case is getting bigger.
There is no doubt that he is going to be a future Hall of Famer when it's all said and done.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then Adam actually might pop on in a little bit too. So he just messaged us in our private chat that we have off the air. So
there you go.
That going on. But that being said, though, I mean, there's a lot of other hockey news that ended up coming out, and one of the big things, of course, has been coaching changes. And one of the big changes that ended up coming up, Marco Sturm, he is now the Bruins coach, and he is replacing Joe Sacco.
Well, I did call this a week ago. I called it, and you said, "Oh, is that officially confirmed?" Yes, it is confirmed by the Boston Bruins, and it's just being waited out. And now it's official that Marco Sturm is the first ever German head coach in the history of the NHL.
Yep. And then, of course, your former coach for the Islanders, Lane Lambert, he's got a new home. He's going to be with the Kraken.
You know something about Seattle that I've noticed? You ever notice in the last few years, within every coach they fired, it's just been retrends?
Yeah. First was Bielsma, which obviously he's a retread because that was his first job since the Sabres.
Yeah,
Then,
Dave Haxtell, Dan
yeah,
Bilesma.
Hextall. Yeah. Now Lane Lambert.
Yeah, and anybody that knows me knows that I absolutely did not care for Lane Lambert as a head coach. And the fact that the Kraken of all teams gave him an opportunity tells me Jason Botterill has learned absolutely nothing, even from his time in Buffalo. He has learned nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone who's ever followed this show, you know our thoughts on Botterill. We've actually met him in person, the two of us together, at one point at the old barn. Which he was nice in person. He just sucked as a GM.
No, I'm not going to discredit him for being a person because he is a nice guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
He was really cool to talk to in person.
oh yeah, much better than I was expecting. Very nice guy, but he was just not good at his job when he was there.
Right. But him and the Kraken, and now bringing in Lane Lambert. Seattle, at least you got a passionate fan base.
What good is that? Like, what good is that going to do? What sincerely? What is Lane Lambert going to do for you guys? The only reason that guy even ever got a job opportunity was because fucking Lou Lamoriello decided to fire Barry Trotz out of fucking left field and just gave him the golden platter and basically said, "Here, bitch, take the coaching job."
First place.
And you know me, I was very advocate. I will say, in Lane Lambert's defense, he's a good power play unit coach.
Right.
I will say that.
Yeah, you guys did well with that. You smoked us on that.
Yeah, and they made the playoffs a handful of times. But again, Lane Lambert was working with the guys that Lamoriello brought in compared to what Barry Trotz did. Barry Trotz was a much better coach than Lane Lambert. But Lane Lambert is just a retrend because his name has been linked to Barry Trotz. That's the only reason why the guy's ever got a coaching job in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. So, good luck, Seattle. You guys are going to need it. Hopefully, things will work out okay in your favor, but I don't see this being a good thing for anybody.
Yeah. And speaking of coaches, I have one for everybody in this chat. Who the fuck is Dan Muse?
Oh, good job, Pittsburgh. You hired somebody nobody knows.
Oh, God. So, I had to do a little... So, whatever happened to Mitch Korn? Whatever happened to Mitch Love?
I thought he was going to be in there, and then all of a sudden I'm like, Dan Muse, who the hell is he?
You know what? I did some digging, and it turns out that Dan Muse was an assistant coach with Peter Laviolette within the last 8 years. He was with him in Nashville when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals, and he was there with him in New York with the Rangers in the last few years. So he's basically been there from Nashville to the Rangers.
Okay, so basically one of Laviolette's right-hand guys, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he looks like a cartoon, he looks like a Saturday morning cartoon villain.
Gotcha. All right, well.
He looks like a bald Tim Murray.
Oh, Jesus. I will say, Pittsburgh, good luck. Your rebuild is going to probably be going on for at least a few more years. And it's probably going to be one of those things where you guys got to get a little bit younger on the team because, I mean, put it this way, Malkin, Crosby, they're not going to be playing forever. In fact, hell, it might be their last couple seasons coming up. So, it's just one of those things. I mean, on the other hand, if Muse can actually get them into the playoffs, that's going to be a hell of an accomplishment for them.
I actually just realized his last name is spelled exactly the same way like Muse, who was one of the main villains in Daredevil Born Again, which is funny.
Yeah, it actually kind of reminds me, too, there's an English band named Muse.
Yeah, I think
that did some, notable soundtrack stuff.
Isn't that a movie also?
I thought it is.
I know it's a Daredevil villain. I know that for sure. Yeah. Because I watched the show. But, no, it's just interesting because I've never heard of this guy. And then when it came out that he was an assistant under Peter Laviolette, I said, oh, that's great. So you got a dorkier version of Peter Laviolette.
Yeah. So who knows what's going to happen as a result, but I would have never thought that Muse would have been one of the contenders for that job. I would have never thought about it.
I'd never even heard of his name until 2 days ago when this got announced, or yesterday, whenever this was announced. Yeah. But it's just strange to me because if you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and you look at the New York Rangers, yes, the Penguins got their guy, but look at the Rangers. You bring in David Quinn and Joe Sacco as your new assistant coaches under Mike Sullivan. So basically, the Rangers and the Penguins basically swapped coaches.
Yeah.
They get Dan Muse. The Rangers get Mike Sullivan.
Right. It's like, hey, here you go. Traded for equal consideration.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
technically, it was a trade.
Yeah, we could look at it that way. We certainly could look at it that way. So,
Well, if you're asking me, the Rangers definitely win that one.
yeah, absolutely. And then of course it's also funny because there is still talk about the whole Jarmo Kekalainen coming into the Sabres, which we actually talked about a lot on the show last week. And it's actually interesting to hear what some Sabres fans are saying on Reddit. And then basically they say Jarmo's a great evaluator of talent. And he basically said one more year of no playoffs, and then Adams is gone and Kekalainen's in. And honestly, I hope we don't wait one more year. Adams should have been gone 3 years ago. And that didn't happen.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say your sanity is starting to boil.
Well, it's getting to the point, and all I can say is he better not pull what Pat LaFontaine did, resign 3 months in, because all I know is I would easily take Kekalainen over Adams right now as a GM. In fact, hell, if I were Terry Pegula, I would have fired Adams right when Kekalainen was signed and basically be like, here, you take the reins. I don't want Adams anywhere near the draft.
Well, Adams, we already know, was a fuckhead to begin with, but it's like...
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't want him near the draft this year.
Well,
Kekalainen to run the draft.
Well, I'm certainly not going to say that Kekalainen was peaches and cream when he got hired,
No,
but I
it
will
wasn't
say
perfect, but at least he actually took a chance with certain things in Columbus. I mean, shit, he got Goudreau. That was probably one of the best moves that they could have done. And unfortunately, Goudreau rest in peace, but still, it's like at least Kekalainen wasn't afraid to take a chance on something.
Well, there is one comment I want to read about Kekalainen that I found on X.
Yeah.
And the comment goes like something like this. It goes, laugh out loud, enjoy the honeymoon period, then signing a defenseman for 8 years that you don't need and trading away first-round picks for more defense that you don't need, scaring away your players by insulting their mental health and trading away veterans because they could sense bad vibes around. It makes complete sense why he was unemployed for a whole year until the Sabres swooped in and he's perfect in the perpetual state of, I don't want to rebuild or we're close to being a contender when they're not.
Yeah, just absolutely crazy. So... it is something where, hopefully, things will be fine. And, we'll see what ends up going on. But all I know is this is Kevin Adams' last shot at anything useful, which obviously I don't think he's useful, but it is what it is. We'll see if the Sabres actually learn something from this. But, who knows? But I do want to make a prediction, though. I do think Kekalainen is the GM next year. And maybe earlier than next year.
Well, we'll see what happens. But I will say, for Buffalo's perspective, if Kekalainen were to become the GM, I could see him going all in like Tim Murray did that one year.
Yeah.
And instead of going
when he
to
got
throw all
O'Reilly
your eggs in one
and
basket.
Steve Ott and made made a lot of huge deals. And then, of course, he brought in Evander Kane the same year.
And Ron O'Reilly and Robin Leonard. I remember that draft. And they got drafted.
Yeah, I was there. I was at the draft when they had it here.
Well, yeah, that was for Austin Matthews.
Right.
But speaking of that, I will tell you my announcement on that at the end of the show. But yeah, so Kekalainen, I do hope for Buffalo's sake that he does work out because, even if they were doing well, I've already said it a few weeks ago that I am not going back. And that ship has sailed. So I wish the Sabres all the best with Kekalainen, and hopefully they make the right decision because right now that team is in an absolute fucking turmoil. They need to make a huge change in the hockey department, and I think maybe bringing in Kekalainen was probably the best choice. I know that if they brought in Lou, you would have lost your shit.
Yeah, I already started to lose my shit last week. Now, if that actually would have happened and they brought him in, all I know is you'd probably be seeing me go off the deep end right now.
Yeah, but you know what? They saved your sanity just a tiny bit by bringing him in Kekalainen.
Yeah, which I'm okay with them bringing him in. So, and that's actually probably one of the best people they could have brought in, all things considered. But thinking about some of the different things that are coming up, because obviously we're getting close to the end of the hockey season, and we're looking at some things that may be happening next year as well. One of the big things, obviously, Yanni Gord ended up signing a big extension with Tampa, and I believe he's going to be there for like the next 6 years.
Oh my God, yeah. So Yanni Gord is getting a 6-year deal worth about 2.33 million at AAV with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So this is likely his last contract with the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess he didn't want to be in Seattle for much longer. And because he had so much success at Tampa, you might as well bring him home, I guess. And I noticed a lot of people that played for the Kraken are starting to go back to their original team that they played for.
Yeah, that has happened. I mean, and it's not the only one, but then here's another deal that ended up coming out, and I wonder what Andy's thoughts would have been on this. But Brock Nelson just signed a 3-year deal with the Colorado Avalanche, and terms
Yep.
were not disclosed.
Well, actually, they were disclosed. It's a 3-year deal worth $4.75 million.
All right, so that did come out a little bit after the original ESPN article. So interesting to see that. I mean, he's a good player for them, and I mean, certainly he can make some great things happen. So that's a big plus. And then as we look into a little bit further into the draft, there is talk that the San Jose Sharks want to trade up.
Okay, this one is a mouthful because I have a lot to say about this one. But before I do that, I do want to say, I wish Brock Nelson all the best in Colorado because this might be his last big contract with the team. So I do wish him all the best. And, if he went to free agency, he probably would have got more cash. But, props to him. He got a nice handsome extension with the Avs. And, he's probably going to hopefully win a Stanley Cup with Colorado before his contract ends. That's the least I could say.
Right. But yeah,
But
with San Jose though, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that they want to do that because obviously they've been rebuilding their team for a while. And think about it. If they were to go after Schaefer, I mean, think about it. You'd have him, you'd have Macklin Celebrini, which obviously he's definitely one of the standouts. Then when you think about it, you have Will Smith, William Eklund, Quentin Musty. They obviously need a defenseman that can grow with that core.
yeah, but here's the thing, because I do have some insight about all this, and I think it's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if the Islanders were to draft Matthew Schaefer first overall, the plan for him is to not come straight up into the NHL. Most people are thinking that if he were to be drafted by the Islanders, he's going to go back to the NCAA and he's going to go into the routes. I mean, that's what most people would want. But to be even more specific, I would say I would love for him to go to like the University of Denver and then play under David Carl's system with the Zion Briam type of role. But I think this would be a perfect way for him to develop if he were to get drafted by the Islanders. It's not a guarantee that he gets drafted, but I firmly believe there's an 80% chance at this point that Schaefer will be drafted by the Islanders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course we'll know right when draft day comes around because we're really actually pretty close to draft day at this point. So
yeah, but back to your point was the Sharks want the first overall pick,
right?
And Matthew Darche has specifically said in order to trade the first overall pick, you would quote have to knock his socks off. So in other words,
you're giving up your future to get the first round pick.
Yeah, more than likely. I mean, listen, the Islanders are not giving away that first round pick for nothing because by any means, I mean, it's great that they got the first overall pick. And I know San Jose wants Schaefer, but here's how I look at this. And this is going to be very interesting. If the Islanders were to agree to the deal to trade the first overall pick to San Jose, the player that I want the most in that trade is Sam Dickinson.
Okay.
That's who I want. Because if you trade back to the second overall, the Islanders at that point can either take Higgins or Misa. But I think at that point specifically, they would take Misa. And then they would also add Dickens as well. And considering what the options are, they also might get a decent veteran forward or defenseman in the trade as well. Because it might include another first-round pick next year. Because, again, the Islanders also have 2 first-round picks. The one they got from the Avs for Brock Nelson. So regardless of how this plays out, I think it would be very interesting if they were to trade back. Like, I don't see it happening, but it would be a very interesting, conversation for that perspective. You know what I'm saying? You trade back, you get Misa or Higgins, and then you add Dickinson as well.
Yeah, I mean, it very well could be, and just thinking about it, we're only what 2 weeks away from the draft, so it's right around the corner, basically, or 3 weeks at the most, I think.
Yeah, most likely. But it's also being said too that Matthew Darsh is currently working the phones, and Anthony LaRocca, who covers for the Islanders on
Yeah.
Newsday, he said that with Yanni Gord and Brock Nelson, we were just talking about them. They're basically off the board at center because the center position is very very thin. Uh, I know one player for certain is going to gain a lot of interest, and that is JG Pajot. JG Pajot is currently a up and coming UFA in 2026.
Hmm.
This coming year is his last year. So there's a lot of interest out there for a top tier center. Pajot is not a number one center, but he's definitely enough to gain interest. And I have recently heard, maybe you've heard the same thing I did, was that the Dallas Stars are interested in trading away Jason Robertson for draft capital because they are in absolute fucking hell with their own team right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and they're gonna be making some changes now that they ended up getting bounced in the last round.
Well, they better do it quick because people are not going to want to go to Dallas if that's the case.
Right, exactly. And I was just thinking about the draft. And I'm like, holy crap! It's already this year marks 9 years since we had the draft in Buffalo already, and it's just crazy to think about it. And of course, and that's the draft where Austin Matthews went first overall, Line went second, then we had Pierre Luc Dubois right after that, and then think about what the Sabres did back at that time at pick number 8. Good old Alexander Nylander.
I remember that one. I remember just saying
Yeah,
to
I was there
myself,
for it. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing picking Nylander?
it's funny because I hardly remember who the Islanders drafted in 2016. Maybe I do, but I just probably don't really remember. Obviously, I remember Pierre-Luc Dubois. I remember,
Yeah, you guys
Austin Matthews
drafted
being
Kiefer
drafted.
Bellows
Kiefer Bellows,
at
that's who it
19.
was. Yeah, that dude's a total bust. No wonder why I forgot his name. Because he
Yeah,
went to the
because
fucking
he ended up being totally, we could call him Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, and Gart Snow was a fucking idiot for not developing him properly.
Yeah. Well, hey, that happened with Nylander. He didn't get developed properly, and then basically now it's like, look what's going on. He actually plays for the Toronto Marlies of the AHL.
Oh, that's interesting. And what I also find interesting is speaking of the Islanders, because we're still talking about the draft.
Yeah.
Uh, as of Tuesday night, the Islanders actually had dinner with Matthew Schaefer, and they're having dinner tonight in Buffalo with Michael Misa.
Yeah.
So
what? It's going to be one of the two picks.
I think it's going to be Schaefer. I firmly believe it's going to be Schaefer because
the hometown guy.
Well, Schaefer's not from Long Island. That's James Higgins. James Higgins is from Long Island.
Okay.
But no, but there is an interesting story that came out about that dinner meeting with Schaefer.
Mm-hmm.
And usually scouts and general managers like to challenge players in terms of how they'll react and respond in terms of different leadership roles. And Schaefer's was very interesting because I don't remember exactly how much the bill was. And Schaefer, keep in mind right now, is 17.
Yeah.
So he doesn't turn 18 until I think August. So he's just at the age rate. But anyway, so Schaefer goes out to dinner with the Islanders, and they give him the dinner bill, and I think the bill was $600.
Okay.
So I don't know if they reimbursed him or whatever. He just outright paid the bill.
Wow. Okay. He didn't give any fuss about it. That's actually pretty cool to see.
Yeah, this is a very interesting story because it makes me think that if they are actually taking this kind of response on a young kid like Schaefer, then how will they do this with Misa? I haven't heard anything about Misa yet as far as like his dinner reaction. I also wouldn't be surprised tomorrow night because tomorrow is the last day of the combine. I wouldn't be surprised if they talk to James Higgins last, just to kind of get a perspective on him.
Yeah.
But I think if I have to be specifically honest about the whole situation, just based on the dinner by itself, I think that Schaefer is going to go first overall. And I'm not just going to judge it based off of one dinner, but I also think it's because he's probably by unanimous decision, he's the best defenseman in the draft.
Right. Very well. And Yeah, and we're not that far from it. And of course, obviously, we'll cover it when we get to draft day. But it's going to be interesting. We're going to see some different things come out over the next couple weeks right beforehand. But then also, before we get into football news and before we get into baseball tonight, next year, if you want to see Ovechkin, it's likely your last chance because it's probably going to be hanging up the skates.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Ov is going to likely retire after next season because he's a UFA in 2026, and chances are he's going to go back to Russia. So, if you want to see Alex Ovechkin, whether you live in Long Island or in my neck of the woods, or if you want to see him in Buffalo and Tom's end of the woods, go see him because
Yeah.
you really only have one opportunity left.
Yeah, and that's gonna be one of the things when I look at the schedule for the games and all that. I'm gonna probably snag some tickets for it and just make sure I get to go watch them play and all that fun stuff. And hey, who knows? Maybe when we're in Pittsburgh for the Bills game, if the Penguins are playing the Caps, that'll be a good matchup to watch.
Oh, dude, you would hit the fucking jackpot if
Yeah.
that was.
I would totally say we're going to PPG Arena if we're doing that. That's going to be our night out.
We're gonna go regardless who they play. I don't care if it's the Islanders. And by the way,
Right.
I should mention this. If the Penguins play the Islanders when we go to Pittsburgh, as we already announced about 32, if the Penguins play the Islanders, you could bet your sweet ass I am going to be decking my Islanders gear.
Yeah, I'll deck my Sidney Crosby baby blue jersey. I'll throw that retro shit on.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll totally throw that on. But hey, it's all good though. I mean, I will say this though. I know you've never been to PPG Arena down there. It is a nice arena. You would like it. I mean, it definitely is a good place, and I actually like. And I mean, the sight lines in there are really nice too. Now I've never been on the upper deck there, but I've always been in the lower bowl when I've been to that arena. But it is definitely a good hockey arena. I will say that straight up. And then last we'll talk about hockey. Hey, the state of the league, the state of the union, we'll call it.
Yep, and Bettman went through a lot of information yesterday, as of Wednesday, June 3rd. And there's actually a list of things he said. One of the things he said, and I'm going to go through every single one of them, he basically said negotiations between the NHLPA and on the new CBA is going really good shape currently, and the current deal is expiring next September. So, not this season, the following season in 2026 is when the current deal expires. So, they're trying to get that lease extended because they don't want to go through another lockout before
Oh yeah,
Bettman
that
retires.
would totally kill things.
Oh, yeah. And he basically also, speaking of Bettman, he dismissed questions about his future by saying, quote, sorry to disappoint, which is translation for, I'm not retiring anytime soon.
Oh Jesus!
Fuck, dude.
After we all thought he was gonna be gone.
Yeah, I thought that too, which is very funny. There's also no plans to address state tax imbalances. Quote, these have existed forever. So I guess by this he means that he doesn't want to add any more state income taxes for teams and players for when they get traded, I guess. That's probably what that means.
Yeah, I mean, then again, Bettman, we know he likes to be a cheap ass on a lot of stuff, so.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, and he also said he plans to tweak the loophole with the LTIR, which is long-term injury reserve list, and no playoff salary cap.
Okay. So basically, all right. So for the playoffs, it actually could get interesting because you can buy your team and you don't have to worry about what the implications will be.
Because we all know in the last couple of years, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Vegas Golden Knights both got very comfortable with using that fucking loophole because, God forbid, Nikita Kucherov was, quote, injured, and he faked his injury into the end of the season, and then it'd be like, oh, what a coincidence, you're in time for the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's that. And he also said that he has no comment on players in the Hockey Canada trial, guys like Carter Hart and Michael McLeod.
Right.
He says, we want to respect the process, which basically at this point is translation for, I have no real answer because the case is going to likely be dismissed, which really sucks, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, we can't predict what's going to happen on that, unfortunately.
And this is where there's about 4 more things left in here. He said there's no chance for a play-in round for the playoffs. He said, quote, we had one this year. 3 teams in playoff positions weren't determined until the last games. What I think he means is like the hunt for the playoffs, a kind of a thing. So to determine who would make the playoffs between the Canadians, the Islanders, and forget the last team. Was it Detroit?
Might have been. I'd have to take a look back.
Yeah, I know that it was very deep in the East. It was with Montreal and the Islanders, etc. And
Hmm.
Pittsburgh, I think, made a very late push, but they're not good enough to make the playoffs. Um, what's it called? He also said something else, and I forgot to mention this earlier. And he said that the Islanders will host the All-Star style event in 2027, which still set from the Olympic send-off in 2026. So, in other words, because the Islanders got fucked in the ass so hard that shit
Yeah.
seeds were coming out of my butthole for that whole segment, because I threw a bitch fit about that.
Right.
He's basically saying that they're going to do the send-off in 2026 for the Olympics
Hmm.
because that was originally supposed to be the All Star game. 2027 is what he's basically saying is that we're working on putting the All Star game in 2027 rather than 2026.
Well, at least if you guys actually do get the All Star game back, then okay, at least you're getting it back, which is good. And I would probably come down there for it. So
Absolutely. And I know that I'm overdue to take you to an Islander game in UPS Arena as much as I want to take you there, no matter who they
right.
play.
No, I got you. I mean, I've never been in that arena before. I was lucky to be in the old barn at least once, so that was actually a good thing because I wanted to see it. Just like I saw the old igloo the year before the last year that was open. So, it's all good. We'll make something happen with it. But
And,
yeah,
I mean, at least you got to see the Nassau Coliseum.
yes, and it was a good place. It was nice and loud. Definitely one of the loudest buildings I've been in. So
Oh yeah, and there's two more. And he also said that if clubs want to go back to the centralized draft, they will. Which there actually is a press release on this. And he basically and Elliot Freeman and Nick Kiprios and etc. all made a statement on this, and they all said that they believe that the NHL's new centralized draft format will last at least 1 year, with the league expected to return to the traditional format in June of 2026. And says that everyone realized this was a terrible mistake. Oh, so in other words, because it wasn't the Penguins, because that's what the league wanted, they wanted to give it to the Penguins for Matthew Schaefer, and the
mm-hmm.
Islanders ended up getting it. So they said, "Oh, the Islanders won it. Oh, never mind. We're gonna go back to the original style that it originally had."
Oh
I'm like,
Jesus.
you know what I say to that? Blow
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
That's what I
exactly.
fucking blow me. And what was the last thing I was gonna say? Here we go. And the last one is that he has no plans to extend overtime.
Okay. We saw that one coming.
Yeah, I mean, I know there was a lot going on, but just bear with me, you
Yeah.
know?
No, it's all good. It's all good. So with that, what we'll do, we'll jump into the football side. And of course, if you're just joining us, if you want to check out some of our older episodes, go to Spotify.com. Take a look for Buffalo After Dark. You'll find us on there. And we've got some older stuff on there that's pretty cool too. And actually, now I'm thinking about it, maybe I ought to reach out to Derek Plant and see if we can get him back on here for a second time because Derek Plant's no longer with Chicago Blackhawks. So now that they made their coaching changes, so maybe I should reach out to him on X and see if we can grab him again.
I actually would like to do that too. I want to get in contact with Darius Kasparaitis or Dennis Seitenberg. I want to get at least an Islanders alumni to come actually join us. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say you should get your cousin the Steamroller back on here for next season.
I got to see what his schedule is, man.
Right,
I mean,
I know he's got a crazy one.
yeah, he wants to fight in September, but I haven't heard anything since.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, if we're able to grab him sometime next season, we can always talk to him about about Ultimate Fighting again. I mean, he was a lot of fun to talk to, so
Absolutely.
good to see. But let's jump into football. We had a lot of stuff that ended up coming up this week, and of course, one of the big things that happened. We talked a little bit about it last week. Stephon Diggs is in some deep shit right now, and because of the whole incident, he may get suspended.
For the whole pink cocaine story that came out a week ago.
Yeah, and you wonder why nobody wanted to take a chance on him.
Oh yeah. So here's what's going on, and there's more information coming out about this. So Patriots color analyst Zach Zolak, I believe I'm saying his name right, has heard that Stephon Diggs could be either cut from his off-season behavioral issues or might be suspended by the team. He said, quote, "I came to the show yesterday with the knowledge that Stephon Diggs getting cut is on the table and that it is being thought of, and it's not just the boat. There's other things that I've heard as well." And there was a video, as we talked briefly about it, that a video of Diggs on a party boat surfaced earlier this past week, and Mike Vrabel had it to address it well. The veteran receiver was absent from OTA, saying, "We're going to deal with it in the clubhouse." Like, shut the fuck up. Literally.
Yeah, really.
And he says, it's something we're aware of, and obviously we want to make great decisions on and off the field. And any conversations I've had with Steph will remain between him and I and the club. And the video obviously showed him with holding a small bag of containing substance, aka pink cocaine.
Yeah.
Like, and you know what the synopsis of all this was? The Patriots said we're not suspending Stephon Diggs.
Yeah. He's your problem now, New England. He's
Yep,
not the
and
Bills' problem anymore. He's not Houston's problem anymore. He's
And
not
he's
the Minnesota Vikings' problem anymore.
I was just gonna say it's sure as hell not Buffalo's problem anymore.
Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah, quite
Thank
literally.
God. But then also in addition to that too, Trey Henderson has been told he can sit out.
Oh, yeah, this is getting very feisty really quickly. So, according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, he said that Trey Hendrickson could be willing to miss games and even the entire 2025 season if his contract demands are not met with the Bengals. And he said that he is extremely dug in on his demands. And since that report came out, there have been speculation of trade rumors about Trey Hendrickson that have been floating around like birds, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and Dan Graziano from ESPN legitimately thinks that this is actually a good idea. He proposed that the Bills should trade a 2026 second-round pick to the Cincinnati Bengals for his services.
Is he smoking the pink crack that Diggs had or something?
I would imagine so.
Why would we trade for Trey Hendrickson? Seriously.
Well, his argument is because so that they have an extra pass rusher to take down Mahomes.
So go ahead and acquire one off of free agency or something. I mean, shit. I mean, especially with wanting to sit out just because of the whole thing with the contract. And then Trey Hendrickson, I don't even think he would necessarily be the best fit for the Bills anyways.
I don't even think he wants to go there. I think he just wants to go. I don't think he wants to be there to begin with. I think he wants to just go someplace that's, someone is going to pay him. I said Green Bay from the very start.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be the likely scenario, but I definitely don't see him coming here anytime soon.
Yeah, no. It's crazy, but I mean, if he does sit out, then he's really killing his value.
Yeah, for sure. But then it's like one of the big stories we're going to talk about, and this is actually something that just came out within the past 24 hours, but Professor Aaron Rodgers has a new home, and Rob Hazu is having a bitch fit right now because he is going to be with the Steelers for the next year. Hazu, get your ass on the show. We want to hear what your thoughts are because you love the Steelers, and hell, you're joining us for that game in Pittsburgh this year.
Yeah, he already threw a bitch fit on Facebook. He said, you know what? All the optimism I had left from this season, you know what? Fuck the Steelers. Fuck Aaron Rodgers. Fuck Mike Tomlin. I am so done with this shit. That's what he said.
Yeah. So, yeah, he's going to be there for 1 year. And in fact, here we go. Here's a little bit of Professor Aaron Rodgers now. Hi, Steelers Nation. So this is Professor Aaron Rodgers. As you probably heard, I am joining this team. And yes, I'm bringing my whole ayahuasca stash with me. So this way we have the big-ass weed cloud when we go to Acrisure Stadium, a.k.a. Heinz Field. And basically with that, the way it's going to work is how it's always been. I run the show, I run the show, and I run the show. And if you don't like it, fuck off. But in the meantime, one of the other things that I also mandated is that George Pickens ends up getting the boot because I don't like his sorry ass. He can go fuck himself as far as I'm concerned. Let him enjoy his time with the Cowboys because he ain't going to be anything of any damn value anyways. Oh shit, I broke character.
Yeah, you did.
Oh shit, I cracked myself up saying that wasn't supposed to go that way.
Yeah, probably.
Fuck.
So I actually found Rob's comment about the whole situation. He said all the little excitement I had for this upcoming season is gone in a flash. Why
Yeah.
bother watching a game this season?
Oh Christ. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
see Hatch is watching us. Hey Hatch, how you doing? So I get to see him on our YouTube page. But yeah, Pittsburgh needed some QB help, but this ain't QB help.
No. He said, fuck this team. I hope they go winless, and I'm not going to week 1 anymore. I don't even care about the season anymore, and he'll be gone by week 12.
Oh boy. Hey Rob, do us a favor. Come over to the Bills. At least you know you'll have a winning tradition for a while. In fact, hell, wear a Bills jersey when you go there and show that you're protesting against your Steelers.
Oh God.
Uh, you know you want to do it, Rob. You know
You
you
know
want
he
to.
does.
You know you want to wear this.
Well,
All of
I will.
this.
Well, I know one other thing too. Speaking of the Steelers, apparently Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin has made it very abundantly clear to the team that he's frustrated with the lack of progress on a long-term deal. As previously reported, McLaurin unexpectedly left voluntary workouts after initially attending, and it remains to be seen whether he'll report to mandatory minicamp. And McLaurin is entering the last year of his current deal, and talks have been very minimal. And apparently, since this revelation, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the front runners to get Scary Terry.
Ooh. I was gonna say, if you're the Commanders, you better start having those conversations now and get a deal done if you want to keep them, because otherwise, that's gonna be a little bit of a setback considering how far you've come in the last few years.
Yeah, and it's funny too because the Steelers have also had preliminary conversations with multiple, count that, multiple teams about potentially adding another playmaker on the offense to complement DK Metcalf. And the Steelers are believed to be motivated to get a deal done at some point, though there's plenty of time before the start of the season.
Mhm.
And if it were to work out the way it is, the Pittsburgh Steelers next year, because the draft's in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
they could have up to at least 12 picks in next year's draft.
Wow.
Yeah. And by doing this, the report is that there has been talk that the Steelers not only interested in Terry McLaurin, they're also interested in Jonnu Smith from the Miami Dolphins.
Ooh, okay. So that actually, honestly, would probably be a very nice upgrade for them. You know what? You just got me thinking about something. How about Road to 32 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh, where we all go down there?
That's going to be quite interesting for sure. But and we've already made a declaration about the Steelers,
Yeah.
being our team this year for Road to 32.
Yeah.
And we bought the tickets 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And
we got the hotel.
Yep, and we just found out a few hours ago that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback for the Steelers when we go to Pittsburgh.
Right. So it'll be interesting. It may be Aaron Rodgers' last season, so it may be the last time we actually see his geriatric ass play on the field. It may not be. He may decide that the ayahuasca is strong enough that he actually comes back for another season and finds another team. Who knows what'll happen, but all I know, Pittsburgh, you got to draft a QB, and you got to do so soon, because obviously Kenny Pickett wasn't the one, and obviously right now you have no QB basically other than Rodgers. So
They fucking blew it at the draft.
They
I mean,
did. They could have
they blew
drafted a QB right then and there. There were QBs available, and they decided not to do it.
yeah, that's the problem. Because if you remember, go back to the draft video that we did
Yeah.
with Rob Hazu. He threw a fucking bitch fit.
Oh, he
because
was pissed.
Yeah, because what was it that he said? He wanted the Steelers to grab what? Another receiver, was it that he said? Another
Mhm.
wide receiver?
Yeah.
And yeah, and instead he said, "Please don't get Shador," and they get Derek fucking Harmon of all people, an
Yeah.
defensive tackle out of Oregon.
Yeah, the 21st pick. And then they ended up getting a running back, Caleb Johnson, which they didn't really need another running back. Then they
Oh
ended
yeah,
up
that's
getting-
right.
Yeah, then they got Jack Sawyer, the edge rusher out of Ohio State in the 4th round. Then they got Yaya Black, the defensive tackle in the 5th round. Will Howard is the QB finally in the 6th round. I'm like, you needed a QB as your first priority. You didn't need it in the 6th round.
Which is ironic enough.
Right. And well, although then look at what the Cleveland Browns did with how they ended up finally caving and drafting Shador Sanders late in the draft, which
Cleveland's
cost them
stupid.
over $40 million. But
Well, Cleveland's stupid. We knew this already.
well, yeah, they're doing Brownsy things like they usually do.
Well, I mean, are you surprised?
No, definitely
you
not
shouldn't be.
surprised on that. But
Oh, speaking of stupid shit, George Pickens has a pretty big mouth, if you ask me.
yeah, so he forced a trade out of Pittsburgh. Then he was told that he can't tweet about it on X, but he tweeted on X anyways, and apparently he got sick of what the Steelers were doing. So basically, that's why he's no longer in Pittsburgh. He opened his big fat mouth.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that George Pickens claims that he forced the Steelers to trade him in the offseason, which I'm not surprised because it's
Right.
Pittsburgh. And he basically said, I forced, buddy. They were gladly keeping me and have a nice day and a blessed one, my guy. And since he said this, he actually deleted this comment on X.
Mhm.
So basically, he was shitting on the Steelers without any compensation.
Yeah. Bad move. And basically, and Pickens was somebody that, could have done some nice things for the Steelers long term. But hey, he doesn't want to be there, so he opened his mouth, and that's what happened. But then we have another player available for trade. Good old Pitts.
Yes, so Kyle Pitts is being brought up as the latest carousel, and apparently multiple teams have reached out to the Atlanta Falcons, who, by the way, I have something to say about them.
Mm-hmm.
About
Yeah,
the
I know you're going to be
availability of.
there this year, too.
Yeah, I am going to Atlanta. I officially bought the tickets on Sunday. Me and Brittany are going to Week 6 on Monday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons, and we
Nice.
will be there,
Very
which
cool.
I can't wait to do. I'm
Yeah,
really excited
absolutely.
about that.
I was going to say, that's
But
your first dome stadium, isn't it?
I believe it is. No, it's not. It's the second. It's no. Okay. It's the first dome stadium, but it's not the first indoor stadium. The first one was Indianapolis.
Okay, that's right. You did go there last year.
Yeah, I did. I was not very thrilled about it. Like, it's okay as a stadium.
Uh-huh.
Definitely was not my favorite one.
Yeah, I think Atlanta Mercedes-Benz Stadium is definitely an upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of my top 5 stadiums I wanted to see anyway, was Atlanta. But
Nice.
in anyway, so nothing is eminent, and the Falcons would prefer to keep him, but being told by Jordan Schultz that it would take at least a day 2 pick to even spark serious conversation.
Mm-hmm. So more to come with the whole Kyle Pitts saga, but that being said, Saquon Barkley may look to hang up the cleats a little bit early because there is talk about possible early retirement in his case.
So, AKA, he wants to be Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Well,
so come on, Saquon. You still got some gas left in the tank. You got yourself a Super Bowl win finally now that you got out of the hellhole known as the New York Giants.
Well, he did confess this to the media the other day because I did watch that clip. He says, I'll probably be one of those guys that it'll be out of nowhere. I'll probably just wake up one day, whether it's next year or 2 years, and just be like, yeah, it's over. Like Barry Sanders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, and if that's the case, I mean, Saquon Barkley, I mean, he's had a great career so far. I mean, he doesn't really have anything else he's got to prove. I mean, he's done a solid job, and now he's got that ring. So, that being said, you know what? If he does decide to call it a career, then hey, he leaves behind a good legacy on his part.
Yeah, and he'll be a legend in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, he will be because basically he takes the contract and wins the Super Bowl first thing. So you know what? Not a bad move if he decides to do it. But I definitely would love to see a few more years out of him though. So I mean, if he does stick around, hey, it's great. If he decides to hang it up, then he's gonna go down as a legend, basically in that city. And then the Giants will wonder, well, why couldn't we keep him? It's like because he did nothing to build a team around him, dumbass. I mean, seriously, it's like you let him waste his talent. He goes to Philly, and look what he does. He puts him over the top.
He wins a damn Super Bowl.
Yeah, and wins it. And basically sets like a single season record.
Quite literally.
Yeah, so yeah, New York Giants, you screwed that one up. And how you still have Dayball and the GM there, Lord knows. But just like the Jets, the Giants are stupid. So,
Well, the Giants are not as dumb as the Jets. I mean,
well,
was
the
it
Jets are
was it?
worse.
Well, yeah, but pay Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley? What the fuck is wrong with them?
Yeah, that should have been a fireable offense right there.
Oh yeah, no. Forget that part. That should have been a first-degree murder kind of a felony to let Saquon Barkley go at that rate.
Yeah, basically you're excised from the NFL permanently. You're banned.
You imagine being an NFL GM right now, and you say to people, "I'm going to let Saquon go for nothing." Imagine having to not only still keep your job, but the fact that your job is even in more jeopardy now, especially, my replacement is Devin Singletary.
Yeah, who's done what?
Since leaving the Bills, nothing.
Yeah, and he didn't even do that much with the Bills anyways.
And he barely played for the Giants.
Yeah, exactly. So Anyways, last half hour of the show, we'll jump into some baseball, and there were some sad news that ended up coming out of the baseball world. So, ex Diamondbacks outfielder Jason Conti ended up unfortunately suffering a stroke, and he did pass away from it a week after that happened. So, this actually came out on Arizona Central, and I know several other news sources reported on it as well. But he did suffer a stroke while he was at work on May 10th. He did die a week later, according to a team spokesman. And one of the things that did come out of it, though, is Conti was an organ donor. So basically, he was able to help others through donating organs and tissue after the stroke. So Conti was 50. He was part of the inaugural draft class of the Diamondbacks in 1996, and he played parts of 2 seasons with them in the majors back in 2000 and 2001. And he was a 32nd round selection out of the University of Pittsburgh, which when we're down in Pittsburgh, I'll actually take you up by the university too. It's actually pretty close to where we'll be staying. And then what the Diamondbacks are going to do is that they're going to honor the life of Conti prior to the game against the Miami Marlins on June 29th, and they'll mark the 25th anniversary of his major league debut. And then after his playing career ended, the Arizona Central reports that Conti became a chef, and he had been working at the Craftsman Cocktails and Kitchen in Tempe, Arizona, so not too far from Phoenix. But overall, in 52 games with the D-backs, he ended up hitting .232 with 1 home run, 15 RBIs. He ended up getting traded along with Nick Beerbrook, who was a pitcher to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, partway through the 2001 season in exchange for pitcher Albie Lopez and catcher Mike DeFelice, which, of course, anyone who's followed baseball for a long time knows that name. And then also, in addition to that, Conti did have some stops playing in Milwaukee and Texas, and his last stop in affiliated ball was in 2006. So, hey, may you rest in peace.
Yeah, and also, we should also mention, too, he was also a World Series champion on that 2001 Diamondbacks team.
Yep. So, does go down with a ring, and that's actually going to lead to another story of ours as well, because the big unit, Randy Johnson, is having number 51 retired.
Yes, Randy Johnson will have his jersey retired next season during the 2026 season for the Seattle Mariners. See, this is interesting because, as you know, I was in Seattle nearly a month ago.
Yeah, and you caught a game at T-Mobile Park.
Yeah, I caught a game at T-Mobile Park for the Mariners, and here's something interesting I found out. Ichiro Suzuki is being inducted into the Mariners Hall of Fame, but Randy Johnson, who also wore the same number as Ichiro, is having his jersey retired. How is that fair?
Yeah, really.
So you're going to let Ichiro go into the Mariners Hall of Fame, but Randy Johnson, who was one of the most dominant pitchers in all of baseball ever.
All time,
the best of all time, possibly. He's getting his jersey retired, but you shared the same number as Ichiro.
This shouldn't happen.
I think that is so inappropriate because, first off, the last team professionally that I can think of on the top of my head that did something like this was the Islanders, because Anders Lee was wearing the number 27 for the last 11, 12 years since he's been with the Islanders. And a few years ago, the Islanders the Islanders retired John Tonelli's number 27 jersey, and John Tonelli gave him his blessing, which is an indication of you're going to be the last player to ever wear 27 as a member of the Islanders. After that, that's it. You can't do it anymore. So to give him that blessing, I think is huge. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense because Tonelli is not only in the Islanders Hall of Fame, his jersey is also retired. What about if Anders Lee gets in there then? You can't retire Anders Lee.
Yeah, what do you do?
That's what I'm saying. The Mariners put themselves in a very interesting position.
Right.
You put Ichiro in the Mariners Hall of Fame, but you retire Randy Johnson. That doesn't even make any sense. If anything, they should both have the jersey retired together.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Help. And put the big unit in the Hall of Fame with Ichiro Suzuki. There you go. Have them share the 51.
Exactly. I mean, again, going back to the whole John Tonelli comment I made, it's the same thing. But at least with John Tonelli, he was able to say, here, Anders, you're going to be the last Islander player to wear 27.
Yeah.
You have my blessing.
Yeah.
At least in that perspective.
Yeah, and Johnson had a great career. Obviously, he played with the Mariners. He played with the Arizona Diamondbacks, got them a couple World Series rings. He also won with the New York Yankees, which, of course, we always say "fuck the Yankees" on this show. But one of the most dominant left-handed pitchers of all time, and then, of course, remember when he ended up killing that pigeon when he threw the
Yes.
fastball?
Yeah,
And
I remember
basically,
that.
you see nothing but just like the exploding bird.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting about Randy Johnson now is that because he's been out of baseball now for almost 25 years,
Yeah.
he's actually a photographer in the NFL.
Yeah, and he's actually been doing a lot of work with that. So, it's definitely interesting to see what he's been able to kind of transition. But one of the tallest pitchers ever too, 6'10", and just think about it. He started in 1988 and career wrapped up in 2009. So it's just crazy to think he's already been out of baseball for 25 years.
I know, right? I mean, again, Randy Johnson, again, one of the most dominated pitchers in all the baseball.
Yeah.
And funny thing is, I think that happened in like what 2005 against the Athletics.
Yeah, I think it was around that time, and just thinking about it, like looking back at his career, obviously Hall of Fame pitcher. I mean, 303 wins, 166 losses, 3.29 ERA, and I mean, just pitched over 4,135 innings in the big leagues.
Oh yeah, I mean he's a Hall of Famer, no question. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure he is in the Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think he was inducted actually, and I don't remember exactly what year it is, but I'm trying to think what it was. I
I
don't know.
want to say it was
I'd have to look back and see like when he got in.
2015. He was
Okay.
drafted in. He was in the. He got inducted in 2015 with
Yeah.
a 97.3% of the votes in the first year of eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's no surprise that he ended up getting in. So, and think about it this way: the Arizona Diamondbacks retired the number 51 back in 2015. So, I mean, he's had it retired at least in one place already.
Well, soon it's going to be two.
Yep, exactly. So, definitely one of the best that we ever got to see, and of course, and he actually was inducted into the Mariners Hall of Fame back in 2012.
I mean, again, Randy Johnson, he was a hell of a baseball player for sure.
Yeah. And just think about he had that wicked fastball that would routinely hit like 102 around that range. I mean, it's just nuts.
They don't call him the big unit for nothing.
Yeah, and if you ever got hit by a pitch by Johnson, oh Christ, you were hurting for a while.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, Randy Johnson is a 10-time All-Star, 5-time Cy Young Award winner, World Series MVP, Triple Crown winner, and also he was the MLB wins leader in 2002. He had a 4-time ERA leader, 9-time strikeout leader. He pitched a perfect game in 04. He pitched a no-hitter in 1990, as you said
Yeah.
before. His number 51 is retired by the Diamondbacks, and he's in the Diamondbacks Hall of Fame. He's also in the Mariners Hall of Fame, and his jersey is getting retired by the Mariners next summer.
Yeah, so, and then of course the Yankees ended up shitting on him, even though he got him a lot of wins because they haven't retired anything for him, and they haven't put him in the Yankees Hall of Fame, and he got them a World Series win. So as we say, fuck the Yankees, but he had a hell of a career.
Well,
So-
he only has one ring, and that's with the Diamondbacks.
Well, even still.
He beat the Yankees in the World Series.
Oh, the Yankees are giving him shade because of that. But
Fuck the Yankees, honestly.
Exactly.
Who gives a fuck about them?
Let's
I'm
talk
just
about
saying.
let's talk about the other New York City team that's actually doing something. So the Mets ended up sweeping the Dodgers.
They didn't sweep the Dodgers.
Well,
they won 3 games.
They won 3 out of the series.
They played 4 games in LA, and they won 2 of them. They won yesterday night, and they won Tuesday. Oh, no,
Okay.
they won Monday.
okay.
So,
Well, hey, perfect world they would have swept them, but
well, the other thing, too, that's very interesting is I actually read the stat earlier today, and I'm going to read it to you now. I actually said this a few hours ago. So, because the Mets beat the Dodgers, I'll read you exactly what I found. So, here it is. So, the Mets, because they clinched the series, because they have 4 total wins over the Dodgers, both at Citi Field and at Dodger Stadium. This also means that if the 2 teams end up likely meeting in the same record at the end of the season and were to meet again in the playoffs, the Mets would get home field advantage.
nice.
So that's a win right there.
They're playing well. Juan Soto's finally hitting some homers again, so he's back on track. Alonso's just freaking crushing it lately.
Same
And
with
Lindor's having a great season also.
yeah. Did you see the game last Friday against the Rockies?
Other than the Rockies getting destroyed.
Yeah, that one. The one with Lindor scored 2 home runs.
Yeah.
I was there.
I know you were there. You were there with your
I
family.
I was there with Britt's aunts and uncles and cousins, and I saw Lindor hits 2 home runs that game. One in
Mhm.
the first and one in the eighth, and I'm just like, my God, this guy's on fire.
Yeah.
But we found out today that because he got hit in the foot by a knuckleball,
Mhm.
he broke his right pinky toe. And there's speculation that he's gonna play within a couple of days. He's
Okay.
day to day as of right now with
Okay.
the Mets.
All right.
But I do think though that beating the Dodgers right now,
It's a good thing for
I
them.
think it's huge because it gives them the respect that they desperately need, and sure enough, they're getting the dignity. I mean, it's crazy enough the Mets are already in the conversation to begin with, but it's
Right.
like, at this point, you gain a little more respect from just beating the Dodgers multiple times.
Yeah, and especially last year, I mean, nobody thought that they were going to get to the playoffs, and they did, and they got hot at the right time. Now, ultimately, they did lose to the Dodgers, who eventually ended up going on and winning the World Series, but they played a good series overall against the Dodgers. I mean, they did a lot to try and get over the hump, but they just couldn't.
Well, nobody kind of expected them to be there last year because last year everyone was saying it was either going to be the Phillies or it was going to be the Brewers. Everyone said the Mets were one and done at that point, but no, they ended up knocking out the Brewers because
Yeah.
of Pete Alonso. Thank you very much. They
Yes.
knocked out the Phillies in 5 games, if I'm not
Right, which
mistaken.
nobody thought that was going to happen because, I mean, the Phillies were on fire last year. We actually went to one of the games last year, and you can watch it that Road to 32 episode, obviously, as well. And basically, we went to the one where we saw them smoke the Guardians 8-0, and I think it was like 6-0 at the end of the fourth or something crazy. I remember it's like they were getting blown out, and I remember watching, of course, we ended up seeing Schwarber ended up crushing one, and then, I mean, we saw a few other homers that night.
Yeah.
So.
Bryce Harper,
Yeah,
Brandon
Harper got
Marsh,
one.
Kyle Schwarber,
Yeah.
and then it was Austin May's debut with the Phillies since he got traded from the O's.
Oh, yeah, he
You
was
know,
good on the mound.
It was. But you know what? I would definitely go back to Philadelphia at some point for a Phillies
Yeah.
game, but I want to go to other ballparks as well, because I've only been to 4 in my life. I can now say at this point, the Mets, Yankees, the Phillies, and the Mariners.
Yeah. I mean, in one way, we can kind of say for you, you've been to the Mariners Park twice. Because I mean, we went to the team store back when I was out there with you too. But to actually legitimately see a game, though, I mean, once.
Yeah, and you know what? I had a great time at that game for sure.
Yeah.
I would say among the 4, obviously I would be biased and say I prefer being at Citi Field.
Yeah.
But
Great
in
ballpark.
terms of entertainment, I definitely got entertainment out of Philadelphia for sure.
Yeah, that was a great ballpark to go to. I mean, I really enjoyed that one, and I mean, out of the ones I've been to, obviously I've been to Citi Field, I've been to Citizens Bank Park in Philly. Believe it or not, I haven't seen a game in Toronto yet, which eventually at some point I'll have to. Now they've redone all of the Rodgers centers, so who knows? Maybe at some point I'll take the hour and a half ride up there and just maybe grab a game or something like that. But it's one of those. I mean, Philly, great ballpark. City Field obviously is a great ballpark. So I mean, it's just a matter of time, just to see a few more. But
You also have not been to PNC,
right, which I would love to get there at some point.
which, by the way, Toronto and Pittsburgh, you have no legit excuse to not see them.
Right. Right. And especially, I mean, I think about it this way. I mean, I only live an hour and a half from Toronto, and I'm like 4 hours from Pittsburgh. So, I mean, I can always make a long weekend of it or something. So,
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. You should definitely do it while you can. Plus, the Pirates are going to be here all summer. So it's not like, you're not desperate. You can
Yeah.
leave like Friday afternoon at like 5, 6 o'clock in the evening.
yeah, and catch
get
like a
to
Saturday
Pittsburgh,
afternoon game or something like that, and then come home.
Yeah.
So,
or
yeah.
even go on a Sunday afternoon or something. Dude, I'm telling you, it's baseball. The Pirates may be shitty,
Yeah.
but at least you get to go see them play. And they have some good competition coming up this summer.
Mhm.
Like they have
Yeah,
the
they do.
Tigers coming up, they have the Giants coming up, they have
Mhm.
the Blue Jays coming up, they have the Reds, they have the Dodgers coming up in September.
Yeah. So there's some good teams coming in, and and same thing even with the Jays. I mean, they have some good stuff coming up. So, it's just a matter of time before getting to both places. But I mean, those would definitely be two of the next stadiums I would want to check out is check out the Rogers Center and then check out PNC Park. And I would almost say PNC Park would definitely be more on the list to check out versus the Rogers Center. But, I'd be game for both.
And you know what, too? Consider this, too. If you do both the Jays and the Pirates, you would have the same amount of games in stadiums that I visited as me.
Mhm.
4 of them. Except you would see the Blue Jays and the Pirates. I would see the Phillies and the Mariners and the Yankees.
Right, exactly. So, it's definitely something on the list. Definitely have to do it at some point, and we'll get it done at some point. But no, good to see the Mets playing well. Good to see Soto back on track. I mean, they're just playing lights out right now, and they have some good pitching going on. So that's a big plus. One of the possible trades that's actually been rumored is Jarren Duran might be going to the San Diego Padres.
If the Red Sox, any dignity, trade his ass to the Padres, the Red Sox are legitimately just gift wrapping the Padres literally their entire lineup.
Yeah,
Because 1 year they gave up Xander Bogaerts for nothing,
right.
and then potentially Jarren Duran. Like, Jesus Christmas, what are the?
I mean, they're stacked. They're already stacked.
I mean, the Padres are a good team in general.
Yeah,
but
they're solid. I mean, they have good pitching. You got Fernando Tatis. I mean, you've got good players out there.
oh, that explains why the Red Sox don't want to. That now it explains why the Red Sox are trying to trade him, because the Red Sox are 30-34 as of right now, and their winning percentage is .469, just nearly at 500. And as of late, they went 3-7 and currently have won 1 game, and they are definitely not making the playoffs this year because you have to surpass the Jays and the Rays and the Yankees.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
The only team they're surpassing are the Orioles.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, no. But I am curious, though, if the Padres were to get Jarren Duran, because they tried to talk into getting him in the season around the trade deadline last summer, I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to achieve it this year again. I wouldn't be surprised. But keep in mind, too, there's also been rumors, not only the Padres, apparently the Mets have been linked to Jarren Duran.
Ooh.
And there's already 2 proposals. One from the Red Sox and one from the Pirates.
Wow.
I want to read those.
Wow, so Bob Nutting actually wants to bust a nut and do something?
Well, supposedly the rumor is that the Pirates are listening to offers for Paul Skeens. And supposedly there's one offer from Prospect Ranks, according to MLB.com. According to Jim Bowden, his idea of the trade proposal is this. The Mets obviously get Paul Skeens.
Right.
That's pretty obvious.
Oh, yeah,
What
you
they
have a
give
solid pitching rotation.
What they give up is the return. So the return the Pirates would get in a trade, if they were to agree to a deal, would be the Pirates get Jet Williams, who's the number 1 prospect in the Mets system, Brandon Sproat, who's the number 2 prospect in the Mets system, Carson Bange, the number 3 prospect in the Mets system, and Ryan Clifford, the 5th best prospect in the Mets system. So you're giving up 4 of your top 5 prospects for Paul Skeens in that deal. I mean, I love Paul Skeens, but
yeah, that's a heavy price.
Way too goddamn heavy. But
I mean, giving up 4 of your top 5 prospects, jeez.
Yeah, no. But the one
just saying Skeens in free agency. There you go.
Yeah, basically. But the one that came out for the Red Sox is very interesting. So obviously the Mets would get outfielder Jarren Duran. That's been the talk of the town because of the Padres.
Right.
The Mets would get Mark Vientos, again, starting pitcher Brandon Sprout, who's the number 2 prospect in the Mets system, and they would get shortstop Jesus Baz, who is the 4th best prospect in the Mets system.
Okay, still a little bit of a heavy price, but not as bad as if you're trying to go after Skeens.
I would rather give up that kind of value for Duran at this point.
Right.
The only thing is Vientos is way too young, and he could turn into something special. So honestly, I mean, I'm not entirely keen on trading Vientos yet. I want to give him at least another year or 2 to really get his shit figured out. I'm more in favor of trading the prospects at this point because I get it. The Mets have to rebuild the farm.
Yeah.
But it's like you're putting all your eggs in one basket on two guys. One is a
Right.
dominant pitcher, probably the best one in baseball, and then you have Jaron Duran, who I don't think he wants out of Boston, but the trade talk is starting to heat up with him going to the
Mhm.
Padres.
Yeah, yeah, very true. So, and the Mets can still do a lot of different things, and especially when Paul Skeens' rookie contract comes up, offer him a shit ton of money at that point and give him what he wants, and there you go. And you're not having to give up all the prospects either. But it'll be very interesting because obviously with the Pittsburgh Pirates, Nutting is a cheap ass. We know he doesn't invest in his team. We know he doesn't invest in players, and basically he's just like, oh, we'll just treat the team as a business write off. Whatever.
Well, that's the problem because
Yeah.
Bob Nutting treats it like a business, and it's a really poor business.
Yeah, exactly. Just like how he alienated the fans recently with the whole Bucko Blocks scandal.
Oh
So
yeah, that too. I mean,
yeah,
there was a whole video about the Pirates not that long ago from Urinating Tree. So
yeah,
when Urinating Tree's calling you out, then that's a problem.
yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see ultimately what they decide to do there. But then the A's, well, they still have no fixed home, and for some reason, I actually got like one of their games with them and the Twins earlier this week, and yeah, their temporary stadium's a shithole. But anyways, apparently there's more funding for Vegas coming out down the pike here.
Yes. So there's a company called Aramark, which is a concessionaire, and Aramark is going to invest at least $100 million into the A's new stadium, while spending 75 of that money on new concessions equipment for the Las Vegas MLB ballpark.
Hmm. And if anyone has seen what the new Vegas ballpark is going to look like, just think of the Sydney Opera House. That'll give you an exact rendering of what it is.
More than that, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the outcome at that point.
Yeah, but be interesting to think. Just think about it. In the last 15 years, Vegas has gone from no pro teams to now potentially having three.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to talk about for the night, because this is actually really good news. If for some reason you come across this video and you're a Chicago White Sox fan, I don't know if you heard this or not.
I did not. So let's get into it.
Okay, so you know that story that came out about Justin Ishiba or Ishbia, the owner of the Phoenix Suns, about
Mm-hmm.
how he was interested in buying the White Sox?
Yeah. So he actually wants to go forward and buy the White Sox.
So the Chicago White Sox this morning announced that they have entered into a long-term investment agreement with Justin Ishbia. They quote, the agreement provides that from 2029 to 2033, current owner Jerry Reinsdorf will have the option to sell the controlling interest to Ishbia. After the 2034 season, Ishbia will have the option to acquire to controlling interest in the event of any such future transactions, and all limited partners of the Sox would have the opportunity to sell the Ishbia at that time.
Good. They actually may be relevant again.
Yeah, that's exactly what the comments were saying. White Sox fans this morning were like, "Oh my God, we are so back!" So
I know. They're
which is
actually, well, hey, it could be worse. It could be Colorado, the fucking laughing stock of the league again. But then again, it's like, hey, Chicago, you deserve to have a second good team again. So, good to hear that.
well, yeah. I mean, the Cubs are ruling Chicago, but the White Sox, they need a new owner because Jerry
Yeah.
Reinsdorf ain't doing shit as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But
Right. And he
he ain't
hasn't
doing
been for
shit.
quite some time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about it like 3, 4 months ago. There were talks of Justin Ishbia, who currently owns the Suns, that was interested in buying the White Sox. And I'm just saying to myself, okay, well, if that's the case that he wants to buy the White Sox, I'm all for it,
Mhm.
because at that point, you're getting rid of Jerry Reinsdorf. And Jerry
Right.
Reinsdorf is like 80 years old at this point.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be around for much longer unless he agrees to sell part of the team. Because basically, what they're saying is that they're basically going to quietly transfer all power from Reinsdorf to Ishbia, if that's where the agreement would be.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a good change for them. They need it. So glad to see that happening. But man, if I'm a Colorado Rockies fan, holy Christ, you wish it was happening to you instead.
Yeah, and I just looked it up. Jerry Reinsdorf is almost 90 years old.
Whew. Wow.
Yeah, this is a good time for to happen. This is a good time.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I will just say this, man. If that'll be a great thing for them, and hopefully that will happen, and that'll be a nice change. Obviously, getting new ownership in there, new blood, it's a good thing. But all I could tell you, don't waste your time watching the Colorado Rockies, because trust me, they actually finally did get past the 10-win mark this season. You know how bad their record is now? Just for
They
laughs?
definitely. I think they got like what 11 wins since we talked last week.
No, there's actually one more. They actually swept the Miami Marlins. So now they're 12-50 on the season.
How embarrassing!
And even worse, the Miami Marlins had less than 8,000 fans in attendance at their last game against Colorado.
What is this, a competition for the most incompetent team in all of baseball?
It's
You have the
gotta
Marlins?
be. It's gotta be. I mean, Miami sucks right now. Colorado is horrific. And when you look at the game that's coming up tomorrow, because the Rockies play the Mets tomorrow in Colorado. So Senga's going to be on the mound for the Mets. And take a guess at who's going to be on the mound for the Rockies.
I'm going to say Kyle Freeland.
No. Senzatella. 1-10 on the season with a 7.14 ERA.
Fucking Christ. And if they beat the Rockies tomorrow, the Mets will have 40 wins in the NL East.
Yeah, they're 39-24.
Yeah, so just to give you an idea how shit everybody truly is, because you mentioned the Marlins getting swept by the Rockies, which, God forbid, I would kill myself if that were the Mets.
There's no... You couldn't pay me enough to watch them two go at each other on TV, let alone in person.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I had to watch the Rockies last weekend.
Right. You were there.
Yeah. At least the Mets won, and I'm a Met fan, so
right.
There's that.
So at least you got that, and you had good weather for the game, so...
Well, to be fair, we're both Mets fans.
Right, exactly.
But in general, so you have the Marlins, you have the Pirates, you have the Rockies, you have the Orioles, you have the White Sox, and you have the Athletics. Mm-hmm. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's like 6 shitty teams altogether.
Yeah.
And the worst part is, and there's a reason why next season is a big year for Major League Baseball to get this CBA thing done with, is because they're trying to force teams to basically spend money. And a lot of the bottom tier teams are not willing to do it. The White Sox are not going to do it. The Rockies are not going to do it.
We know they're not going to do it.
Yeah, the Athletics are not going to do it until they move to Las Vegas.
Right.
The Orioles are. Yeah, Denver. I mean, the Rockies are not spending. The Pirates are not spending. The Marlins are not spending. And you know what's really sad? Guess who owns the Marlins?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know who owns the Marlins?
I just had a brain fart for a moment.
Well, no, I want you to guess first, and I'll tell you who it is.
So, Bruce Sherman, the founder of wealth management firm Private Capital Management. So he's a fucking hedge fund owner.
Oh, God. And then you have fucking Derek Jeter as a minority owner.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, no wonder they're in deep shit. You have a hedge fund owner, and you have a former ex-player, but at least, Derek Jeter knows the game. I mean, Sherman's just a bean counter.
Yeah, why do you think the Marlins are such a shithole?
Yeah, because he doesn't want to spend. But even funnier, Miami Marlins owner Bruce Sherman in February, and this was actually on their local Channel 10 down there, which is one of their news stations. Basically, the way that he ends up putting it is that he said, well, money's going to be spent on the team's infrastructure rather than high-profile free agents. Then what ends up happening is that the Marlins president of baseball operations says, quote, everybody wants you to sign every free agent that's available. We understand that, and we have signed free agents. We've signed not the big-name free agents, but we've signed quality free agents. Okay, so the only thing you end up acquiring is pitcher Cal Quantrill, but if you've signed these so-called quality free agents, how the fuck are you a baseball basement team?
I mean, it's bad enough that Jeffrey Loria was once the owner of this shithole franchise, and he won a fucking World Series nearly 30 years ago.
Right. But it's like, okay, Miami, spring training wins don't count. You got to do it in the regular season, and obviously you're not doing it in the regular season.
And you wonder why the Marlins just got swept by the Rockies. No wonder why they're garbage.
Yeah, to lose to the Rockies is pretty pathetic.
Jesus Christ! I didn't think it was going to be that bad.
No. But
I
yeah,
mean,
it is that bad.
Marlins games now are making Florida Panthers games look, shitty in comparison. Because back when the Panthers were bad, they were saying, please come to our games. Yeah, the Marlins are doing that right now because ownership doesn't want to do shit.
Yeah, exactly. They don't care about their team, and unfortunately, I mean, it's representative of the product that they're getting. They're not giving their fans anything. They're not investing in their team, and they wonder why people don't go there. And you're getting less than 8,000 a game.
I mean, they're going to probably get more money from the fucking Winter Classic next January for that stadium when the Panthers play there.
Oh, Jesus, don't get me started on that whole thing.
Oh, yeah, I know. But no, the issue is the Marlins need to be competitive at one point. They have to be.
They do. And realistically, what should happen is all teams should be spending a minimum. What they should do is have like a cap floor and basically be like, okay, you have to spend a minimum of this much per season every season.
Well, that's the plan because, again, after this year, the CBA is going to expire, and Rob Manfred wants to get a deal done. And his big priority is to get the owners that don't spend for shit. Bob Gunning, Dick Montfort, fucking Bruce Sherman, all these guys, they don't spend. And that's the big issue with these owners. The big thing with a lot of these owners is they're businessmen. And a lot of businessmen don't like to spend money.
Yeah.
And because of
they
these
just want to use it as a write-off.
Yeah, they basically just use their teams as insurance, basically, when they die. And a lot of these guys, too, are either in their 70s or in their 80s or in their 90s. Jerry Reinsdorf was another one. So it's like you have all these owners that don't want to change anything. I mean, yeah, the White Sox did it. God bless them. But it's like, exactly, finally. Because at that point, it's like, God forbid, White Sox fans were not going to bother because it's getting to a point where they might end up relocating. Because what if Justin Ishbia buys the team and he says, "Oh, I'm going to switch it and we're going to move to Nashville in a couple of years."
Right. Which that is a possible expansion team area that they could be looking at. I mean, well, that, and I know Orlando keeps coming up to possibly move Tampa over there because Orlando's willing to spend for a stadium, but Tampa isn't. So who knows what's going to happen there, but.
And there's also been talk of expansion in Montreal, although I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's a tough one because it's like Montreal their stadium wasn't good. They didn't spend necessarily, although they did have some good teams, but I guess like their fans, they definitely do have a baseball fan base there. So, I mean, that I think just remains to be seen. But I mean, I think that the Montreal Expos would be coming back? Probably not.
Well, I also would keep an eye on the Diamondbacks because their current stadium is under a lease and they might be forced to move. We really don't know yet. But teams like North Carolina, like Charlotte would be a nice one to have. Austin or San Antonio would be a nice one.
Salt Lake City's come up a couple times now, and I mean, there's been talk about possibly trying to get a major league franchise there, and just think about Salt Lake. I mean, you now have, of course, you've had the Utah Jazz in the NBA. You have, of course, now you have the Utah Mammoth in the NHL. So now throw a Major League Baseball team on there. Hey, there you go. It would actually be pretty interesting to see what ends up happening with that. And there is talk that they could possibly look at that as an expansion area.
Well, I think expansion would be great for baseball because they have not been keeping up with the times in the last few years. They really haven't. I mean, ever since the Diamondbacks came into the league, they stopped counting expansion teams.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, it's just a matter of time to see what ultimately goes on with possible expansion. But, I mean, would it be nice to get a few more teams in? Sure. I mean, there's definitely some cities that would support it.
Without a doubt. I mean, we'll see what happens in the near future because realistically, I am not a fan of the direction of any of these owners. Because unless they are willing to make a change for the salary cap and for the CBA where that says you have to spend a much amount of money, then don't throw a bitch figs. I know some owners like Artie Moreno and Steve Cohen and of course the Steinbrenner family, they love spending money. So this is nothing new to them.
Right, of course. And actually one last point. Or if you're the New York Knicks, you get to the conference finals and you fire the coach that got you more playoff wins in the last 25 years than anybody else. So Tom Thibodeau got the boot.
Where's my beer? I don't even know who that is, and I'm just saying, where's my beer?
Yeah, he was a coach with the Bulls. I think he coached the Hornets at one point. Good coach, and he got more playoff wins in the last several years with the Knicks. I think he got like 24 playoff wins, and he still got them fired because basically what ends up happening is like, oh, you couldn't beat Indiana.
I mean,
But
unsurprisingly.
yeah, but nah, he'll land another job soon. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's gonna be coaching next year somewhere. So he's a good coach. A lot of people just say that he is relying too much on his starters and not on his bench. So,
Yeah,
who knows?
For the most part, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, but that being said, we covered everything tonight. So is there anything else you want to jump into before we wrap up?
Well, yeah, there is actually one last thing I want to mention is while we are going to do the live stream for the NHL draft on June 27th, currently I will not be there for within the first hour and a half because I'm going to actually be covering the draft party for the New York Islanders at UBS Arena on June 27th, and I will be there when they announce the first overall pick.
Nice. So yeah, so we'll make some plans on the show. Obviously, we're going to cover the different picks that come up on the draft, and we'll get some people on here. So of course, we're still going to do it like we usually do, and then typically right after the draft. I mean, usually it's like the week after we wrap up for the summer, and then we'll be back in the fall. So not too many shows left. I think we only have like four or five left before we take our summer break. So.
Well, I definitely tell you one thing for sure, and that is next weekend, the 12th, that's the last Thursday show for now.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 18th of June, that's our last Wednesday show of the season. And then July, or unless you want to count the 25th, because I think we were talking about this earlier, we'll do the show on the 25th and we'll do the live stream on the 27th. And then July 1st, that's a Tuesday this year, we'll do free HC and then we'll wrap it up for the summer.
Yeah, so if you want to watch some more content, obviously some new stuff, we'll take our summer break like we usually do. But, we'll be back in the fall and of course we'll hit it hard like we normally do. And then of course we'll have some more Road to 32 episodes and, get some stuff going on. And it's kind of funny because I see now that I've influenced you because now you're taking the train to the stadium instead of driving to Citi Field. Because you've done that the last couple times now.
Yeah, I've taken the train twice now to Citi Field, and I'm gonna start taking the train to go to Islanders games because I've started to figure it out a little bit. Hell, I literally took the train a month ago to go to a Yankees game. So
you figured it out.
Yeah, I mean it's getting pretty easy at this point. But speaking of which,
you just transfer to Jamaica. That's all.
Yeah, I intend to take the train to go to UBS in a few weeks. But aside the point, I will also for my last official talk. This is it for me. I promise. Is I'm going to be going, and I said it earlier briefly on the show, it is now official that Brittany and I will be in Atlanta, Georgia in October. We'll be there for the game on October 13th, which is a Monday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons. We don't know yet how long we're staying for, but we do have tickets to that game. We are, in fact, going to Atlanta. We're still getting a word from a few friends of ours about Carolina, and once that comes up, I'll announce that as well.
There you go. Hey, Mr. Bubba Matt, it's your chance. You live in Atlanta. If you want to say hi to Bobby real quick when he's down there, just let him know.
He won't know shit, as far as I'm concerned.
But, it's all good. It's all good. Hey, just a quick shout out to our friend Mr. Bubba Matt, who is on our show for the first couple seasons. So, but that being said, we'll call it a night. We gave a good hour and 45 today. So, always nice to have you guys on as usual. And of course, as more stories do come out during the week, we'll let you know. Of course, if you want to check out this episode or any of our previous episodes, go to Spotify.com, go to YouTube. We do have everything on there. And then, in the meantime, we'll see you next Thursday. So take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great rest.